The undertow of negative thinking can drag us into a vortex of despair, draining our energy and clouding our vision of a more promising future. This experience, while common, is profoundly personal and devastating. Have you ever found yourself reliving a past mistake with an intensity that suffocates the present? Or perhaps anticipating catastrophic scenarios that never materialize but still consume your peace of mind? This is not a character flaw, but rather a manifestation of a mental pattern that, over time, has become automated, a constant echo in our psyche. The difficulty lies precisely in identifying the origin of these intrusive thoughts and, even more so, in finding an effective way to dismantle their roots, rather than merely attempting to suppress their bitter fruits. What makes this struggle particularly arduous is the subtlety with which negativity infiltrates our lives. It does not shout, it whispers. It does not emerge as a sudden storm. It settles in like a persistent fog, gradually stealing clarity and warmth. Often we become so accustomed to this haze that we begin to believe it is reality, accepting darkness as the natural state of affairs. The search for relief then becomes a solitary and confusing journey, marked by frustrated attempts and a growing sense of powerlessness. The core of this distress lies in a fundamental disconnect. We believe our emotions are merely passive reactions to external events, when in fact, they are actively shaped by the internal narratives we construct. The way we interpret a situation, the judgments we make about ourselves and others, and the predictions we make about the future, all of this is intrinsically linked to the quality of our thoughts. If this mental tapestry is predominantly composed of threads of criticism, doubt, and pessimism, the emotional outcome will inevitably be somber. The challenge, therefore, is not to eliminate all negative thoughts, an unrealistic and even counterproductive goal, as thoughts are simply mental events, but rather to cultivate a different relationship with them. It is about learning to observe them without fully identifying with them, to question their veracity and utility, and crucially, to direct our attention towards more constructive and realistic perspectives. This paradigm shift is what we propose to explore, not as a magic bullet, but as a gradual process of mental re-education, an active reclamation of our inner space. The promise here is not an instant elixir, but rather a map, a guide to navigate the complexities of the mind and emerge into a state of greater well-being and clarity. The urgency to address this issue manifests in the myriad facets of life affected by chronic negativity. Interpersonal relationships become strained, workplace productivity plummets, creativity is stifled, and even physical health can be compromised by prolonged stress. It is a vicious cycle wherein unhappiness breeds more negative thoughts, which in turn fuel further unhappiness, trapping the individual in a labyrinth of self-imposed suffering. The quest to extricate oneself from this impasse is, for many, an arduous struggle, as the brain's natural defense mechanisms, designed to alert us to dangers, can become oversensitized, interpreting threats where none exist, or disproportionately amplifying real challenges. The absence of adequate tools to manage this mental hypervigilance leaves people adrift, feeling powerless against their own thoughts. Hope lies in recognizing that this condition is not an immutable destiny. We possess an inherent capacity to reconfigure these patterns, to cultivate a more fertile and flourishing mental garden. This path invites us to look inward, not with fear or resignation, but with curiosity and determination, in order to unravel the mechanisms that keep us ensnared and, more importantly, to discover the keys to liberation. It is crucial to acknowledge that the individual experience of negative thoughts is multifaceted. For some, the burden may stem from past traumas, the emotional scars of which continue to bleed into the present. For others, it may be the constant comparison with others, exacerbated by social media culture, which creates an unrealistic benchmark of success and happiness. Then there are those who grapple with inherent cognitive distortions, ways of thinking that warp reality, such as catastrophizing or dichotomous, all-or-nothing thinking. This diversity of origins explains why generic approaches often fall short. What works for one person may not have the same effect for another. The journey to freedom is not a single trail, but rather a labyrinth of corridors, some darker, others more illuminated, demanding careful discernment and constant adaptation. The proposal here is precisely to offer a finer lens of analysis, an invitation to investigate the particularities of our own minds, identifying the specific triggers and predominant patterns that afflict us. By unraveling this personal mental architecture, we become capable of applying more targeted and, consequently, more effective strategies in building a state of lasting equilibrium and well-being. The necessity for effective intervention is starkly evident in the repercussions that persistent negativity engenders. It is not merely a transient annoyance, rather it constitutes a significant impediment to personal flourishing and the capacity to savor life in its entirety. Confronted with this reality, numerous self-help endeavors often prove woefully inadequate as they gravitate towards superficial remedies that fail to address the root cause, the intricate web of thoughts that ensnare us. The quest for solace then devolves into a repetitive cycle of hope and disappointment, further exacerbating feelings of powerlessness and despondency. What this roadmap endeavors to achieve is distinct. Instead of proffering generic advice or nebulous promises, we invite you to embark on a journey of self-discovery, wherein the emphasis will be on comprehending the specific mechanisms that sustain your negative thought patterns, and from this understanding, cultivating personalized tools to dismantle them. The focus will not be on attempting to suppress these thoughts, an arduous and frequently fruitless undertaking, but rather on learning to observe them with a fresh perspective, to interrogate their validity, and ultimately, to redirect your mental energy toward more constructive and realistic avenues. The disruption of negative thought patterns frequently commences with a subtle yet potent reorientation of focus, shifting us from exhaustive external analysis to more profound internal exploration. Consider the hyperbole that often accompanies